Hello, beautiful people. I am so glad you're here. Welcome to Your Spiritual Guru podcast. I'm your host and spiritual guru, Erin. I've been on my own spiritual journey for the past 2 years, and it's an honor to walk beside you as you navigate through your own. This podcast is for anyone who is wanting to do inner work, get more in tune with themselves, heal past traumas, and find their inner power. If that's you, then sit tight because this is going to get deep. You ready? Hello, everyone. Welcome back. If you are listening to this on the day that it comes out, it is Friday, TGI Friday. I am recording this Tuesday, February 21st, and it has been a really productive day for me. Feeling really good, so I wanted to go ahead and, knock this off of my, to-do list, but also I was really inspired to talk to y'all about this topic. And it was kind of what brought this, topic about was that I saw a post, like a picture, and if y'all follow me on the Instagram, the podcast Instagram, then y'all know the picture that I'm talking about. And it just kind of jogged my memory of this state that I've been in for a while now, but I feel like it's been creeping up on me a lot more recently. And I felt like it was something that other people needed to hear too. And it is about forgiving yourself for past versions of yourself, right? So what do we mean when we say that? So this whole podcast is geared towards and around spiritual growth, internal growth, inner work, shadow work, all of these things. But something that happens when you grow from one place to another is hopefully you acquire new lessons, new information, new surroundings, new environments, etc. And what that sometimes does is because you have this heightened level of awareness and knowledge, you look at your past decisions, past way of thinking, past, behaviors, all of those things, and you can sometimes look at it in a negative light. And so, me, just speaking from personal experience, there are a couple of things that come to mind when I think about, if I knew then what I know now, I would have made a different decision. Like, for instance, with my career in EMS. So if y'all listened to the podcast episode, a few weeks back, you know that I was interested in EMS back in high school. And so the logical way of thinking would have been, hey, if this is something that that you're interested in, that you're good at, maybe you should, pursue an education in that after high school. But that didn't happen because, when you're in high school, your teachers are all like, you need to get a career in something that pays a lot of money and, go to a 4-year college and get a degree and da-da-da. So you have all of these influencers or people that are influencing your decisions and kind of making you think all of these different things. But if I knew then what I know now, I probably would have elected to go to a tech college and just get my certificate or what have you in, EMS, services, whatever the degree title is. But it didn't happen that way. And so because of that, I have, over $60,000 worth of student loan debt and no degree to show for it. I have 6 years of college, background or experience, but no degree. And so, just things like that. And I feel like a lot of people listening to this would probably be able to relate to what I'm saying and make it fit different parts of their lives or different experiences that they've had. But one thing for me a decision that, or I won't say it was a decision. It was more of just a time period of my life that I don't feel like I've forgiven myself for, was the 5 years that I spent in an abusive relationship. Now, when I say abusive relationship, I'm not talking about physical abuse, right? And hopefully with me telling my story, this will help someone, feel more comforted in their journey, because maybe they feel less alone. Or maybe this will help someone identify an unhealthy situation that they're in, right? And I've talked about this time period before in some of my previous podcasts. I've mentioned it a little bit here and there, like, oh, I was in a toxic relationship, oh, da 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 da. I've mentioned like some little instances, but I haven't really gone deep with it yet. And part of that could be that I really didn't want to revisit that again. But it's been on my mind a lot recently, and it kind of all came about because I watched this documentary on Hulu. It's called Stolen Youth. It's about the cult that happened at the Sarah Lawrence College campus, I think it was. Anyway, it's on Hulu. It's called Stolen Youth. And just to give a generalized, like, this is what it's about, this guy basically brainwashes these college kids into, doing all sorts of things, confessing to things that they had never done, doing things that they normally wouldn't do, and, all of these things. And as I'm watching this documentary, I start to relate a lot to it and a lot to the victims. Now, some of the things that this guy does, the guy in the documentary, his name is Larry. Things that this Larry guy does isn't necessarily the same thing that my ex did, but like the tactics are very, very similar. Like, not knowing, but being very, very hard to really get to know the person, right? They'll tell all of these extravagant stories, but then down the line you realize that there's not a whole lot of truth to it, right? Or the act of basically almost forcing you or brainwashing you into making your circle smaller and smaller and smaller until you only have him. That's something that my ex did to me. And one way that I remember that he did that is that, I'm one of those people in a relationship. I want you to meet my friends. Like, I want my friends to approve of you. I want to see what you think of them, what they think of you, vice versa. And so I remember I would introduce him to my closest friends, and he would always have a problem with them. Always. It didn't matter who it was. He would always have a problem with them. Or they would do something or say something, and then after they would leave, like, he would say stuff like, oh, well, that was really fucked up. Like, I don't know, I wouldn't be friends with a person like that, and da-da-da. If my friend did that or said that, then, this and that. Like, not really forcing me to cut ties with that person, but just putting little, like, nuggets into my brain of like, the person that I'm with doesn't approve of my friend. Like, maybe he sees something that I don't see. You know what I mean? So that was one thing. Also, You know, one thing that hindsight 2020, looking back at that time period and knowing what I know now, one thing that I would catch myself saying is like, God, like, how did you not see this? Like, how did you spend 5 years of your life with this basically narcissist person, and like the things that he was telling you, like, how did you believe all that stuff? Like, it is obviously a lie. Like, what were you thinking? But then I have to stop myself sometimes and remember how that environment was when I was physically in it. And at that time, you know, it was probably years into the relationship. So I had suffered this abuse, this mental and emotional abuse for years. And people like that, what they do is they get you to question your mental state, your sanity. I literally thought that I was crazy, and I could not form like logical thoughts. Like, my train of thought was not logical. You know, I could tell you of some like outrageous lies that this man told me that you listening, you know, with a sound mind and probably untainted, untraumatized, well, I won't say untraumatized, everybody's traumatized in their own way, but, you know, not traumatized to this level or with this experience, you'd be like, girl, like, really? Like, how did you believe that? But like in the moment, I don't know if it was denial or that I literally just thought that I was crazy or what it was, but that was the feeling. I felt crazy all the time because it was like we would get into arguments and I would say, well, you said it, or I would explain how the situation transpired and kind of trying to like paint the picture of what happened. And he would say things like, that didn't happen. I didn't say that. Or he would accuse me of saying something, and I was like, or bring up something from months past. Oh, well, you did this and you said this, and I'm like, I never said that. Yes, you did. You know, just making me question my sanity, right? And so this went on for years. And like I said, hindsight 2020, looking back, part of me is just like, how did you stay? Like, how in the world did you allow yourself to be in that situation, make the choices that you had made, and allow him to destroy your home, literally destroy my home, and then for most of the time not help me pay any bills or anything like that? And it's just like, how did you let that happen? You know, like, where would you be right now if you hadn't wasted 5 years on this person, you know? But then I think to myself, well, I wouldn't have my daughter. And she is just the most amazing human being. She's my favorite person. She's just, I needed her, I think. You know, children need you, but I don't think they realize how much we need them too, you know? And being a mom changed me for the better. And in a way, being her mom and having her with the person who I had her with, my abuser, almost made, it's like it made me a better person in the sense that it gave me the strength to stand up to him and say, this is not right, this is not okay, because I was no longer just looking out for my well-being. I was looking out for the well-being of myself and my child, and also thinking of the example that I want to set for her, right? And so now I get to say, look, this is not the relationship that I want to model for my child. I want her to see two happy parents, even if they have to be separated. Your child doesn't care who, if your parents live together or who does what, or like, all they care about is that their parents are happy, they're safe. That's all that should matter, right? And even bringing into the situation about me choosing not to, or me electing to not go to a technical college and follow the EMS career, I would probably be way further along in my EMS journey than I am now, because let's think, like, I graduated high school in 2011. It's 2023 now, so that's what, 12 years. I would have been a paramedic. I would have had all of these, all of this experience underneath my belt. But also, maybe I wouldn't have had my daughter. So I have my daughter, and she's able to watch this journey of mine. And she's able to see that, one, her mother is happy, and she's going to fight for happiness, and she's going to make sure that she's taken care of. But also, my mom goes after her dreams, right? She's self-sufficient. She's independent. She's setting a good example for me. And now, my daughter says that she wants to be a firefighter when she grows up, right? And that started out, like, young. Like, I have pictures of her, like, at the playground, they have, like, the different, like, toy trucks and cars that you can, like, sit in and pretend, well, there was a fire truck one, and she would always go to the fire truck. And, like, that was maybe, like, 1.5, 2 years old. So this has been a while going on. Like, she's always, like, expressed interest in, like, the first responder type of career. And so I think that's pretty cool. But sometimes it's hard for me, because when I go back and visit that time period, I see all of the time wasted, and that's valuable time. Like, for instance, every decision is different. I could look at my decision not to go to a technical college and pursue EMS earlier as wasted time. Like, God, I wasted 6 years of, education that I could have, spent elsewhere, because I didn't listen to what I wanted at that time. But in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, sure. I wasted 6 years. I accrued all of this debt, but I can still at any point in my life make the decision to switch and change. I can say, hey, now I want to pursue this thing, which I did. And I guess the same goes for relationships too. Like, at any point you can say, hey, this is not where I want to be anymore. Let me, do something else, or be single, or date this person, or what have you. But for me, that decision, that time is a little bit bigger for me, because that time that I spent in that relationship didn't just come with, oh, I wasted 5 years. It came with trauma. Trauma came out of those 5 years. It changed me as a person. In some ways, in a good way. I realized how strong I was. I realized what I did not want out of a relationship, out of a partner. I realized a lot of things about myself that I had to work on, because let's not put all the blame on him. I don't know enough about him, and that's crazy to say. I spent 5 years with this person. I don't know hardly anything about him. He's the father of my child, and I barely know the man. But I spent 5 years with him. It's hard for me to pinpoint or say, oh, well, you act this way because this, that, and the third, because I'm not him. I don't know what he grew up in. I don't know what he experiences. I don't know how his mind works. His mind obviously does not work like any logical thinking human being. And so I'm forced to start from myself, right? And ask myself questions like, what was it about me that allowed me to think that that situation was okay? What was I looking to gain from that experience? What was it that I was subconsciously seeking out of that? And when I think back and play the sequence of that relationship in my head, one thing that always made me, I guess, stay or give the relationship another chance is that I was always trying to get back to how it felt in the beginning of the relationship, like the first 2-ish, 3-ish months. And my logic, my mindset with that was, if he did it before, obviously he's capable of being this person again, right? I mean, if you think about it, that makes sense. Like, if you've done it before, you can do it again. The difference, though, is, and what I didn't realize at the time was, that time frame from, month 1 to month 2 or 3, however long it lasted, that was an act, right? And he acted just long enough to get me hooked, right? And after that, he allowed me to see his true character. But at the time, I was very insecure. And I needed a lot of outside validation, right? So once I chose someone who I wanted to be in a relationship with and who I wanted to be romantically involved with, I sought their validation, right? I looked to them for happiness. I looked for them for reassurance. I looked to them for compliments. I looked to them for, comfort, all of these things. Like, they were my source. And so that was something that I had to realize was something that I needed to work on myself, is that I need to stop seeking outside validation from other people. If I want love, I need to give myself love first. If I want comfort, I need to give myself comfort first. If I need reassurance, I need to give myself reassurance first. If I desire anything from anyone else, I first have to give it to myself. And that's one thing that time frame kind of taught me, because I spent that whole time looking for validation from this person because I was so insecure with myself, and that's what made me stick, and that's what had me stuck in that relationship, was because I didn't know how to get it or give it to myself at that time, right? But afterwards, when I finally said enough was enough, I'm done, this is done, we're over. And when I started my spiritual journey, that's when I had to do a lot of that deep work, and a lot of that had to do with asking myself those hard questions, like, Aaron, you cannot blame him for everything. What is it about you that made you stay? There had to be something. You need to dig deep and figure out what it is that made you stay there. And that, once we get to the root of that, that's what we need to work on healing. And so that was a huge epiphany for me, because that changed everything, right? So now I'm going through life and I'm seeing it through a different lens of, because I feel like a lot of people, and it's easy to do when we're in a situation like that, to take the victim mindset, right? Like, oh, this happened to me, poor me, woe is me. But the truth of the matter is, if and this is not to say that all instances are, the victim's fault, or, what have you. Like, what happened to you, you did not deserve, right? But you also have to look within and see what things put you there, right? And this is about, I don't want to like get really like philosophical and, you know, politically correct, but like, you know, this has nothing to do with like sexual assault or physical abuse or whatever, you know, but it's a mindset thing, right? And so it's easy to say, this happened to me, woe is me, poor me, and kind of use that as a crutch. But until you get to the source of why it happened, or why you sought that out, or why you stayed, or why you made excuses, or whatever, it's going to continue to happen over and over and over and over again. The universe is going to give you the same lesson until you learn what you're supposed to learn from it, right? And it's going to give you the same lesson in different people. I'm going to say that again because I don't think y'all heard me. It's going to continue to give you the same lesson in different people. Because even after that toxic relationship with my ex, my child's father, I still had to go through that same lesson of seeking validation and sticking with people and asking people questions and begging them to stay with me, or you know, changing myself so that they would like me more after that, because I still had not learned that lesson, right? So, given all of that, there comes a time where you have to say, yes, this awful thing happened to me. Or yes, I made this decision in the past. And maybe now, knowing what I know now, I would have made a different one. Or yes, I thought a certain way, you know, back then, but I've learned new information and now I no longer feel that way. There comes a time where you have to stop beating yourself up for what you didn't know in your past versions, what you didn't do in your past versions, because you can only do and be as much as you know. When you know better, you do better. And so you have to look back. And I encourage you to do this. I encourage you to look back at those versions of yourself and give them a hug, give them love, forgive them, and love yourself for the people that you were in past versions of yourself. Because if you hadn't been through that, if you hadn't been that person, if you hadn't seen or gone through those experiences, you wouldn't be the person that you are today. And I, for one, love the woman I am becoming and growing into. And I wouldn't be here without the past versions of myself, the ugly chapters that I went through in my life. And it's no different for you. So I encourage you to forgive yourself and love yourself. It's time. Okay? So, until we meet again, namaste.